not only is it from a nutritional standpoint, but it's also a physical standpoint. And to be honest with you, with women especially right now, I'm glad to see the guys here too, but with women especially, women don't even feel the symptoms. They are asymptomatic. And I just had a client come in the other day, and she ended up in the hospital, and what had happened was she had a muscle spasm when she was sleeping, a big muscle spasm in her back. And she had no idea the pain was so terrible that she thought, I don't know how to handle this. So she ended up calling 911, and sure enough, she had a heart attack. They took her and they actually admitted her because they wanted to run more tests, and she had a stroke in the hospital. So any type of tingling that doesn't go away, you know, there are certain different symptoms that you want to look for. That's a real biggie. So just keep that one too. So heart attacks, awakening, are we at risk? We are all at risk. And so I'm going to give you some information about how we can prevent that. So despite billions of money that we're spending yearly, people are still having issues. The drugs aren't working. The drugs are masking the problem. I'm definitely not against Western medicine, but because I'm an advocate as far as complementing what they do. And so, but when it's not working, we got to figure out, okay, what else can we do to make the body heal? Okay, and I like to look at it in a more natural way with basic supplements and/or exercise, good sleep, good water, etc. So anyway, here's a little chart that we have that shows, you know, here's the arteries when we are first born, okay? And then as the chart goes down the age span, you can see how the plaquing ends up, okay? Now, what is that plaquing? It's actually calcifications from calcium. I do truly believe that in this day and age, everybody's so worried about osteoporosis that they're taking too much calcium, and or they don't have the nutrients that are coenzymatically working with the calcium to keep it in the tissues, okay? And so sometimes the calcium seeps out of the tissues, and where does it end up? It ends up in the arteries. And the other one, of course, the biggie, is the cholesterol that's actually been plaqued from their diet that's not really so good. The part that I will explain a little bit later about heart health is that as we age, and I will demonstrate my little unit that I brought today, but as we age, our arteries become stiffened, and stiffened because of the plaquing and or calcifications. And so what we want to do is we want to reverse that action. We want to make our arteries much more supple, okay, and elastic. So then it's a kind of part of anti-aging, you might say. So anyway, the symptoms usually arise, you know, too late. So we want to be more preventive, and that's basically what my job is to teach people to become aware of everything that goes on in their body. Okay, so little things just make a big difference. Anyway, and over 50% of people with heart disease, the first symptom is an attack. So, and by 2030, 23.6 million people will die or will have a stroke or a heart attack. In March 2010, the drugs that are being used for blood pressure and triglycerides, they aren't working. They aren't working. So this is where I come in as far as wanting to complement them with showing them what to eat, giving them the coenzymes that they need to offset any kind of damage that they may already have. So an estimated 80 million Americans, adults, 1 in 3 adults, have some kind of cardiovascular disease. High blood pressure, they've had a heart attack, coronary artery disease, they've had a stroke, angina pectoris, fibrillation, atrial fibrillation. A lot of women actually have that. So that's a bit one that actually also has to do with hormonal imbalances too. And so a little bit later I will go into that a little bit. So the symptoms of cardiovascular is, of course, pain or pressure in the chest. When you're sitting down, you've got your discomfort to the back, or the jaw, or the throat, or even your arm. And basically, usually it's the left arm. Nausea, that's another symptom that you would kind of overlook, right? Indigestion and heartburn, those are major ones. Weakness or anxiety, shortness of breath, rapid irregular heartbeats again. And with women, loss of appetite. That kind of struck me as odd. Being too tired or being too weak. Sudden coughing, okay? Sudden coughing that lasts, and for no reason at all, we don't know why. The heart flutters, and then of course, as I explained about my client who had the muscle spasms. And then, of course, the artery clogging, okay? So what other factors will impact our cardiovascular? We've got to have water. We have to have weight management. We have to have blood sugar regulation. Blood pressure and kidney dysfunction are also important. Vitamin D status and nutrition status. I'll hold this here a moment if you want to write those down. I will speak a little bit about them. Water is the most important. We are 70% water. And if you drink a lot of water, even more. So, and it's not really only that you need the water, it's got to be alkalized. We've got to have our minerals. We have too many water systems out there that are reverse osmosis that runs as an acidity of 3.5. And really, we need to have an alkalinity of 7.0. Okay? And so there are certain water systems out there that work really, really well. If anybody's interested, I actually have water systems. I talk about water systems. We have water classes, and there are some really good ones out there. So, okay, so let's go on. So early or mild kidney disease will increase the risk of heart attacks if the kidney is not functioning properly. Okay, and a lot of that has to do with the excess sodium. The Na stands for sodium. So you think about fluid retention, and we also think about is the metabolism of the sodium actually working well through the kidneys. And then there's also an enzyme called renin, and that is a hormone that's actually produced that helps with the metabolism of the kidney. So then I found out, well, actually we're 72% water. Then I found out that in some homes, not only is it the acid water, but it's also the soft water units that people have in their homes. Yeah, so, and that they have proven, I have studies that show that cardiovascular issues, and it was in a epidemiological study, showed that people who had soft water conditioners literally ended up with cardiovascular risk. So independent risk factors for cardiovascular disease, whole blood viscosity, plasma viscosity, hematocrit and fibrinogen. So that has to do with part of the red blood cell panels that you normally get a blood workup with. And the fibrinogen is really important. For my studies, it showed that there's a lot of undigested proteins floating around in the bloodstream. And so, you know, that's also a risk factor. And the other part of this, too, is that most people don't drink enough water. Okay? I know some people think that the coffee and the tea and the juices and the sodas are all fluids, but they're not really that healthy for us, right? So weight management, 20% overweight will give you a risk factor for cardiovascular issues. Okay, increased intra-abdominal fat is also another one. The inflammatory markers, so I highly recommend people to, when you do get a blood workup, to do the C-reactive protein. Why? Because the C-reactive protein in a blood workup is a cardiovascular marker. For guys, it's a prostate marker. For the rest of us, or all of us actually, it's also a inflammatory marker, highly more sensitive than a sedimentation rate, which people are more aware of. So the C-reactive protein. I also use it as a cancer marker. So if there's a lot of inflammation going on in the body, I want to get to the root of that and find out, okay, is this actually an autoimmune issue coming up with people, or is it cardiovascular? Is it diabetes? It's also a marker for diabetes. So that's really important. Also hormonally, the circulating estrogens, especially women when they're starting to go through the change. And actually, guys, you guys go through the change somewhat too. And actually, to be honest with you, I do have a client who has, he had 3rd stage breast cancer. And a lot of it had to do with his diet and lifestyle and the fact that his hormones were out of balance. So I highly recommend even men to have their hormone panel run. Now, the circulating estrogens do increase with weight, and that usually happens at the change. And then it also throws off the other hormones, so very, very important. Sleep apnea, that's a major factor with cardiovascular disease, and I think I brought up at one point just earlier, is that lack of oxygen. That's really what it's all about. So we have our cells that are fluid. They need to be fluid. If you look at a live blood cell, I don't know if any of you have looked at live blood cell, but if you do, and it's a really healthy live blood cell for a person, their blood cells are just kind of floating around, and they've got lots of fire inside of them, and they're just really vibrant, okay? And if people don't exercise, they don't get enough sleep, they don't breathe well, a lot of people sit at the computers like this, so they're contracting their lungs. We need to be open always. Then it puts pressure on the lungs, but also on the cells, the cellular health. And so, but sleep apnea, a major factor with CHD or cardiovascular disease. So, and learning how to breathe. Learning how to breathe is very, very important. We also have inflammatory processes that go on when you do have sleep apnea. So there are different locations where you can go and have the test run. And people who snore a lot, including men and women, that's a sign of it. Toss and turning, don't get enough sleep, such as at least 6 hours, and preferably 7 to 8. Then that's also a major factor. And then the factor as far as the weight management goes is that this is the waist to hip ratio. It's actually better than using the, I'm blanking on it, the BMI. It's actually a formula that you can do to find out your basal metabolic index, that's what it is. And so what that tells you is if you are in the proper category, or if you're starting to get into the overweight or obese category. But the waist to hip ratio is actually the better one. Anything over 35 is kind of dangerous. So cardiovascular disease, it all goes hand in hand as far as blood sugar regulation too. Okay? So with diabetics, they're more at risk for cardiovascular health issues. And 1 in 3 people who have blood sugar dysregulation, insulin sensitivity, or metabolic syndrome, the weight, the high blood pressure, all of these things, that can also lead to the diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Now, with blood sugar regulation, you have what we call hypoglycemia and then hyperglycemia. Hypoglycemia is where people tend to, well, number one, probably not eat breakfast, may skip lunch and only eat dinner, or may not have a really good diet. Also, people who get sleepy after they eat, people who are, they get irritated if they don't eat. So there's quite a few things that can be looked at as far as, in my office we do a complete intake that takes about 2 hours just for the very first session, and we go over the entire system. So, and this is a big issue with us today, and especially with our children. I'm so happy that now in the schools they're really trying to look at what the kids are getting for lunches, what would be a healthier choice. Getting the sodas out, which is so detrimental to their health, and of course the weight management with that. So insulin resistance